Hello. So, first question. Across history, every major technological shift has faced resistance. Socrates rejected writing, fearing it would weaken memory. Novels were unseen as a societal threat, like radio, TV, and video games in their time. So, I would like to ask you, are we now witnessing a similar reaction with AI, maybe an overreaction with how we will be impacted by AI, especially in storytelling? Maha,
Yes.
what do you think?
Well, first of all, hello, everybody. What a great turnout. Such a pleasure to be here. When you think about storytelling, everyone always brings up the word authenticity. So when AI comes into it, I think about one major thing. Authenticity has to do with intent. And intent in storytelling or in authenticity is lived experiences, your emotions, your values, things that you care about. It's that trust and credibility and relatability that makes a story connect with us. So when I think about AI and storytelling, I think about how can we use AI to understand our audiences better, but the stories are what's going to connect us, and it's what's going to shape the perception. So I really believe that, shaped perceptions comes from good storytelling that an algorithm or AI could never replace.
Tom, what their thought on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. Look, if you take, let's look at the printing press, let's look at electricity, let's look at the internet itself. When each of these technological revolutions came out, there was certainly a part of our society believing that they were breaking down the fabric of society. I think all you've got to look at is pretty much every parent looking at every child's generation thinking that they were doing something wrong and taking us in the wrong direction, mostly because of the technological change during that period. So this is nothing new. I think we're looking at this with apprehension, to your point about authenticity. It's certainly breaking down content from an authentic standpoint. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, the journey that we go on, and I think in the next generation they'll look back on a different technology and have the same outlook.
Wilfrid.
Yeah, I think for me, I agree with both of my fellow panelists, but I think for me it's really important for us to always remember every technology has faced this kind of critique or backlash, but in our day-to-day lives, we've always ended up embracing them. So if we talk about like the internet and how that's basically democratized a lot of things, but it's also caused obviously a lot of issues with social cohesion as well. I think there's always a good and bad with every new technology. I do think we do need to always remember and also take that into account. How exactly are we going to balance the pros and cons of new technology? But I think it's inevitable, and I think as someone who studied computer science, the technology always is going to go forward, and you just have to work out how you're going to jump on the train and what are the rules on this train.
But maybe for us that are living this transition, it's harder than for new generations to adapt to these new technologies or this new technology. How do you think, you all talked about authenticity. How can we keep authenticity, especially when we think about brands? I mean, everybody here is working for companies, and we have a huge challenge on that. Tom, I'll start with you, and then we go around.
Sure. I think that, look, the use of AI, it depends how we approach this, what AI can do and what it should not be doing and cannot do, right? So what AI can't do is replace the nuanced understanding of the human experience. That has to remain firmly in control of us. We need to be defining what is the purpose of the content we're creating. Why are we creating this piece of content? What is the messaging behind it? That needs to be defined by us. AI can help us in terms of the delivery, in terms of the hyper-personalization, in terms of driving improved engagement from the content. But understanding the actual message itself from, let's say, a cultural relevance standpoint, that's a whole different discussion.
Like how AI impacts, or storytelling that you build with AI or helped by AI impacts local cultures, for example, specific regions, right?
It can do, but I think we need to take a step back from that and understand, again, like why is this piece of content being created, and how does AI play a role? So at our agency, we're looking at, let's say, digital product, social campaigns, large-scale TVC work. Those things are just expressions of a brand strategy, right? And those can be amplified and grown through the use of AI, and AI can take us in different directions on top of those things. But what it can't do is actually help us to develop. It can't help us to develop the actual, the nuance of the emotional intelligence that's required before we're actually developing the story that then flows through each of those deliverables.
I think even for a brand, there's so much that it can do. It can help us scale and structure a story and to think about it. It can help in research. It help us like take tons of data and analyze it so that we can deliver like a good story as a brand, or figure out how to get consumer insights based on analyzing so much data at a time. So I think from my standpoint, especially in communications and what I do in storytelling with our clients, is we think a lot about how can we use this from a data perspective to analyze large sums of data and also turn it into something that can help us be better at storytelling, at connecting with audiences, at understanding their needs, understanding consumer trends, understanding where the intelligence lies in helping us do better for our consumers.
But when you're trying to build a personal brand, and I'm sure
yes,
a lot of your
like
clients...
my favorite topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to build a personal brand, this kind of information, or a lot of information, is it good, or it's like overwhelming, something that it's hard to manage for, in a personal level, or building a personal brand?
Yeah. How many people in the audience are building their personal brands today? Okay, you have to do it yourself. It's a personal thing, but it's your story. It's your thought leadership. It's your ideas. It's how you behave at work. Are you a good listener, a collaborator, a team player? Those are the personalities that you want the world to know about you, or the traits you want people to know about you. AI isn't doing that for you, but it might help you figure out, how can I share my ideas? How can I share my values? What are ways that I can articulate some of the things I care about? Your personal brand is about trust and credibility and relatability. That comes from you. But AI can help you structure it or scale it or get intelligence on how to best tell that story to other audiences.
Wilfrid, you're deep in the ad market, and we know how the ad market's trying to optimize stuff all the time. And when you go to building your personal brand, or telling a story, or storytelling in general, if you try to optimize too much, maybe you kill the originality or something like that. Yeah. What's your feeling about that? Like, should we try to optimize to the maximum point, or there's like a balance that we should keep looking through AI and storytelling?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think when we're working with brands, it's first, I think as a lot of the panelists have said, is they want to create a vision. They have a vision of what they want to make, what story they want to tell. And I think then I go to the layer of how can the AI we have created or other AIs help people do that, right? So I think there's very obvious use cases. If you have a story, you only speak English, and then you can also use AI to then basically tell that story in multiple languages. Yeah. That's something already that is an easy win for a brand. But I think you're right about hyper-personalization and authenticity. It is a balancing act, right? Because we have the ability to hyper-personalize a lot of information now. Like, I can make an ad that will basically be in Arabic based on a certain profile of user, etc. So I think you're right in terms of there are concerns there. But I think it's really important for those brands to actually create messages that resonate with people. And I think that is what the AI is actually helping people do. So I think that's the where we see it really having a really powerful effect. In terms of where the limit lies, and I think that's a great question, I think there is a danger when you're using a lot of personalized information. So for us, we avoid that. We actually are using more contextual information, and actually that's enough, especially with the data models we have in today's age. You don't actually need to know someone's personal phone ID. You don't need to know someone's email address. You just need to know the context of that user. So there's a user based here in Qatar with their phone set to Arabic. I can use that context, and they're playing this kind of game. We use that context to then generate an ad that is more contextually relevant to them.
And what are some, a question for everybody here, what is some of the most innovative initiatives that you see in your field using AI?
I mean, there's some things that you guys might not know is being powered by AI. Yeah. So how many of you guys watch Netflix? When you get on Netflix, it might recommend things for you to watch based on the algorithm. The AI can tell what kind of things that you're interested in. So you don't know that that's AI, but that's delivering content to you in ways that, I mean, that's one of the examples I think that a lot of people could interact with every single day.
I think from our side, the video models are improving on a monthly basis. We're infusing that technology into a lot of the work that we do in terms of our creative workflow. I believe that some of the content that is being witnessed today, people don't realize it's being created by these tools. And the problem is when we go back to the authenticity conversation, I'll give you one example. We're creating content with Hey Gen. Does everyone know what Hey Gen is as an idea? So essentially you film a piece of content, you can talk directly to camera with Hey Gen, you essentially upload your likeness in a hyper-realistic manner, and then you can just voice prompt the tool to talk as you and for you. So when you talk about building a personal brand, for example, we're working with a very influential person in Dubai. We've uploaded that content of his. You essentially just talk at the tool. You can say any words, it doesn't matter. You move your hands around, all of this is absorbed. And then we can literally have that individual saying absolutely anything. Now, there is an ethical challenge with that,
yes.
of course, and I'm sure we're going to get onto that conversation. But the reality is that tool is allowing us under controlled, in a controlled environment, to be able to leverage that person's likeness in order to help build their brand in certain ways, because maybe they don't have the time to shoot a piece of content to respond to something that's in the news in real time. Now we can do this for them. So we're infusing that into the work that we do.
But also for a personality or a CEO that is using AI to produce their videos, there's a risk that you talked about ethics, but a lot of people can fake content nowadays, and it's I imagine the size of the challenge. Is it possible to address this kind of risk?
It has to be. But we don't.
It doesn't matter if you're doing it or not. Someone can do.
Yeah,
right?
We have to figure that out, right? We absolutely do, because in the rise of deepfakes, and we've all seen enough deepfakes online at this point, the reality is we have to find a way of controlling that. Otherwise, much of the content that we see, we just don't know if it's authentic or if it's not. Is it from the individual? Is it not? So these are challenges that the industry faces, and it's something that I don't believe has been addressed yet. But there are some very intelligent people figuring that out. We have to find a solution for it, because otherwise, it's going to continually break down trust in news outlets, in pretty much every piece of content that people see. So it's something that we will address.
Wilfrid, anything very innovative or different that there's a lot of stuff, but something that particularly brings...
I think three things. I think I've seen a lot of interesting campaigns where people have scaled and brands have showed messages across the world in different languages with different video content using AI. And I think that's really interesting in terms of setting a message. Like if you take a country like India where multiple languages are spoken and you're able to create content in like literally 10, 15 languages, that is really interesting. And that is actually something that I think will allow a lot of brands to scale and personalize a message, and even individuals to personalize a message and also have more viral moments if you're an influencer. I think the second thing I've seen, and I think it really is quite interesting, is stuff with like Opus Clip, and I'm sure people in the audience might have seen that. If you've not used it, you've definitely seen the content online. It basically helps influencers and I guess content creators find viral moments in their videos and then automatically upload those. And I think that's actually quite interesting. I actually tried it out, and I could actually say it does a really good job of finding what humans believe is viral. So I think those are some of the technologies I've been experimenting and looking at, which is super interesting. I also think a lot of the video models, as you were saying, are getting a lot better. I think 5 years ago, it was a bit questionable of the quality, but I've seen some very powerful video models where people, without being told, would probably start to not notice, but there are still defects, for example, in lip movement, which we haven't really mastered in terms of the way the models work, but we're definitely seeing progress, and I'm giving it 1 or 2 years, and we'll probably not know the difference.
It's moving so quickly, right? I mean, going back to your first point about the hyper-personalization, being able to deliver a message in a relevant dialect across, let's say, the country of India. I think one of the challenges with that is the potential fragmentation of the collective campfire story, and I think that's what we also need to address, right? Because humans, if we go all the way back, we've been passing messages down from generation to generation. Now, if we lose sight of that because we're literally creating for silos, how does everybody have a collective understanding of the message? So what we've got to make sure is we're utilizing AI as a tool for delivery and further engagement, but we're not losing sight of the fact that it is the human touch, it is the human creativity that starts that process.
Is it possible, is it possible also, Tom, to use AI to amplify underrepresented groups or regions that nowadays
For
maybe
good.
are they not have the same space or the same attention that other groups living in different countries or different regions have?
Yeah, I think there's two ways to address that. I think the internet is inherently culturally biased, so therefore the data sets that many of the tools are trained on are culturally biased. So if we talk about a data set standpoint, we have to get that right. We have to make sure that the tools that we're expecting culturally balanced outputs from have culturally balanced data sets in order to train on. So that's one area that needs to be addressed. But to your point around cultural representation, so we're an agency based in the region. We're based out of Dubai. We work across the region. We work with culture and tourism brands specifically to help tell the region's stories to the world. Now, in some of the regions that we work with here, some of the brands don't have data on their history. They don't have content that we can look at from centuries prior, or let's say, or decades prior, even in some cases. So we've utilized AI in a way to help tell those stories, whether we're leveraging, let's say, Gen AI with an illustrator, with a storyteller that's actually creating, let's say, a piece of content that we did for Diriyah in Saudi, which was telling the story of the road to Hajj. They had the story written, but there was no content, there was no context. So we worked with the local storytellers to help turn that into film content that they didn't have a budget for to go and shoot a Hollywood-style video, but we were able to create something utilizing Gen AI to tell a story that might not have been told otherwise. So I think this is where we can start to utilize some of those tools in order to tell stories.
Maha, I know you love this subject.
I mean, I like that because I feel like if AI can help level the playing field to help people get an opportunity, to your point, that don't have a voice or can't scale the way others do. But I think a lot about with the models of the videos, ethics in AI and like bias and fairness and transparency, and are we disclosing that this is an AI generated piece of content? I feel like we need to be able to know that as a consumer. I want to know, is that real or not real, because I won't trust it if I feel it's fabricated in some way, form. I know that there are AI influencers that they're just generated but not based on humans, that you couldn't tell the difference. But if it was me making a video that was like, I think I would question the authenticity, not just of that, but just like I wouldn't be able to trust it. So I feel like a lot of people in the room might feel the same way. Like, we want to know, is it AI generated or is that real? And I feel like there's some rules to be written about that.
Wilfrid.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic, AI and ethics, and it goes back to my first answer, where we do have to be honest and we do have to be balanced. And I think this is where stuff like digital watermarking is going to be very important, so that people should realize that this content was generated with AI, whether that's images, whether that's audio, whether that's text. And I think it also means that checks and balances need to be made with the brands, where the brands actually have some messaging, whether it's before or after. And this is what we've been working with a lot of our brands, to make sure it's clear that anything generated with AI has been labeled.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Appreciate you.
Thank you all for
Thanks,
coming
everybody.
here.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.